What does it take to do multi-million dollar deals? What is the difference between an entrepreneur and a business owner? What is the mindset that is needed to achieve absolutely extraordinary results? We're going to dig into all of those questions in this conversation with my guest today. Now, my name is Patrick Francie. I'm the host of my podcast. Before we get started, just ask you to make sure you subscribe, to like, to comment, what you like, what you don't like, all good. But today, my guest, Mark Evans, and I are diving into his extraordinary journey of someone who is known as the deal maker, or simply the DM. Now, Mark is not just a name, and deal maker is not just a nickname. They both stand as a symbol of entrepreneurial prowess and a definite beacon of success in the business world. He is a 12-time best-selling author, a serial entrepreneur, a devoted family man, and Mark's story is nothing short of inspirational, with over 25 years of experience in real estate and entrepreneurship. Now, he has absolutely cemented his place as a cornerstone of the investing community. His literary contributions, like this conversation, are filled with invaluable insights and lots of guidance from his experience and the lessons he's learned from his extensive real estate and entrepreneurial endeavors to just life journey overall. You are going to love this interview. Listen in, enjoy. Mark Evans, welcome to the Everyday Millionaire podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Definitely. Thank you for having me, Patrick.
Now, Mark, this is the first time we're meeting. Your bio is great. And I always like to start out asking my guests the fundamental question, which is, detailed as your bio might be, when somebody approaches you today and says, Mark, what do you do? What do our listeners need to know?
Well, listen, I'm a husband and father first. That's the most important thing for me for what I do today. And I'm a real entrepreneur. I think that word is watered down drastically with social media. But I've been an entrepreneur for about almost 28 years. Mid-June will be 28 years. And, own businesses and, have done real stuff with real people and not just like fluffing it up,
So when you look at you, because we were just a little bit off camera, you talked about you own a number of businesses, and do you play in a specific space, or what is it? I've had guests that own 6, 7 different businesses. They own franchises or they have started franchises. So what swim lane do you kind of play or swim in, given what you do?
Well, I always talk about the one step model. So I've started in construction, then did real estate investing, still do. I'm a full-time real estate investor still today, but also in a data company that, in real estate, you got to market. So I have a data company. So we started that. We looked at our P&Ls. What's our big expenses? Hey, data. One of my guys is an engineer by trade. So we started a data company, and then taking another step over. And then, we have to do email marketing and media. So I'm in the email media space as well as, the fintech space as well. So, and that's business services. So I'm a business owner. I need business services. I'm sure other businesses need it. So those are some of the bigger businesses we have, as well as lending. I have a lending arm as well. So, these are all companies that are semi-connected to my world. I'm not starting an AI company anytime soon. Patrick, that's where a lot of people get in trouble is they're doing one thing and we forget how hard it is to create the language, the relationships, and everything inside these industries. And then I see people abandon it because they get bored or wore out or whatever. I'm like, just step one step over. Don't go 17 steps over because you're literally starting from scratch at that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I want to ask you a question. You've been doing this for almost 30 years. You've been in business. Now you've used the term interchangeably, and this is just a curious question. Do you have a distinction for you between entrepreneur and business owner?
No, I don't think I do. I think, I think some people could. I think it depends on how, to me, I'm a business owner and an entrepreneur, but also a lot of times people say business owner, they're not really business owners. The business owns them, So entrepreneur has always been a real term. I believe I was born an entrepreneur, honestly. I've always had that spirit. Yeah. I know Gino Wickman, I don't know if you know him or not. He believes people are born entrepreneurs, not created, which is an interesting topic in itself. But I do think there's a little distinction. I've never really thought about it, but everyone's like, when I used to call myself a business owner, the business owned me.
Mhm.
you know,
I think yeah, I know for me, I kind of oscillate between the two, but for me, business owner is literally owning the business in terms of not working in it directly per se, not being a technician, as in if I'm not in the business, then I own the business. And so I happen to own a couple of businesses that I'm not in the day-to-day activities of it. And then on another business I am, but I still consider myself the business owner, but I'm very entrepreneurial in spirit, still trying to create, still trying to drive sales, still trying to, reinvent the existing model, kind of tweaking it and trying to grow it in a different direction, given what's going on economically, those kinds of things. So that's the entrepreneurial spirit, which is really about creation in a different way. Whereas to me, a business owner, my distinction is that I'm not in it day to day. I'm not the technician that drives the bus on a day to day basis.
Yeah, it's an interesting distinction. I do think a lot of my companies, as we do a lot of sales, right? I look at those guys and gals as intrapreneurs. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how that'd be as a business owner, because I don't know if they could be an intra business owner, but like an intrapreneur, like they're entrepreneur spirit. They make money
Yep.
when they sell, which that's how businesses grow. But yeah, it's interesting. I've never really looked deep into it, but maybe just because I'm kind of jaded, because everyone at me and pretty much everyone I know says I'm a business owner. I'm like, tell me about your business, and they are the mule. They're in it day to day,
Yeah.
and they really don't own the business.
Yeah. You bring up another really great point, and I never know where our conversations are going to go with my guests, but I think this is something to shine a light on, because many who listen to this are entrepreneurial in spirit, they're business owners, but I think you hit a really key word there, was this entrepreneur. And I look at myself and my style of business, and what I like to create is that opportunity for the team to come together and not just have a job and 9 to 5, and yes, they work 9 to 5 or whatever the case is, but they're part of the creating of the business. So my goal with my team is always to have a culture of entrepreneurship, so that they feel like they're a part of it, and that the decisions they're making and the ideas that they come forward with and the creativity is all part of it, and it's necessary. And so that's kind of what I'm hearing with how you operate as well. Is that accurate?
That's 100% accurate. Back in the day, I wanted to be a boss, and I was not a happy guy. And now, about 12 years deep into the game, I realized I just wanted to be a leader and lead leaders. And by
Yeah.
doing that, you got to up your game, and you got to talk differently. You got to think differently. And the biggest thing I've seen, you got to cast big visions where they can actually see their leadership and life inside your vision, and everyone else in between. So, I used to, everyone's like, oh, I'm not as selfish anymore. I used to be selfish, like I'm here to make millions, but that was me. That wasn't about the team. And I'm not looking for people that want a job. I want people that want a career. Like these are big distinctions as you're evolving in the game.
100%. And so when we go down these paths of creating team and being the boss, there was a book I read many years ago, and I don't even remember the details. It was like really basic, but it was called, the title of the book was "Boss" is a 4-letter word, and it was really about the difference between leadership and being a boss. And it was pretty impactful for me back then. I was quite young at the time, and I think when I think about it now in reflection, I probably carry a lot of that learning, those values forward. Like somebody, if somebody calls me a boss, it's like it's in jest, right? It's a bit of a joke. So I don't operate that way. Talk about your real estate a little bit, Mark. You are a full-time real estate investor. Are you sales in terms of flipping units, wholesaling units? What's your model in the real estate world?
Yeah, I mean, it's an evolution process. We've done thousands of real estate transactions. I've been doing it since 1996. So, I started off like I had no money, no cash. I lived with my parents. Like that's what I love about real estate. It's the equalizer of dummies. Whoever has enough guts to go out and do the work will win. You can win.
Yeah.
And real estate's really math. It's just basic math. And where we mess it up is called humans. We get all emotional. We try to get all fancy and sexy and do all these cool things. It's like it either works or it doesn't. Don't make it work. It either works or doesn't. But so I've done a lot of single families, thousands and thousands. I was a pretty large, buy and hold, buy and develop, build and develop. And then I evolved into, going volume. I was at a volume player. I was doing about 100, 120 deals a month on the turnkey side. So we'd buy, cash, fix up, sell. But that's a huge operation. That's a
Mhm.
different animal, you know. And then I realized, you know, and we're doing this, we're creating some good revenue, good movement. And then I just honestly, I'm more of a LP at this point. I have great partners I've worked with many years now, where you know we have cash businesses. I have cash. I go in and I LP on these deals, and you know I'm not a day-to-day operator. It's not where I shine. That's not my strong point. I look for great operators. I love that. I'm good at what I do. They're great at what they do. And we work well together.
So when you're talking about LP, as in, are you doing in that LP? Are these all multifamily? Are they single family? Are
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
bundled?
No, definitely big multifamily, 200 unit plus,
Yeah.
and as well as commercial. Flex space, commercial. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of square feet of units in that
Yeah,
range. Yeah.
that's awesome. Now, are you're based in Florida right now?
Yeah, my home base is Florida. I'm here 7 months a year, and the rest up in Cleveland, Ohio area.
And so, where are you doing deals in the U.S.? Are you doing deals basically in Florida? Is that your home turf?
No, I've always done Ohio, and then the south, like South, like Atlanta, Savannah, Georgia. I like the warmer markets a little bit. They don't get beat up as much during the winter, but there's different effects to that as well. But I like Ohio a lot. I go for states that are very owner friendly, not tenant friendly
Mm,
as necessarily. So I'm not
yeah.
necessarily like New York or Pennsylvania anymore. I've done stuff in those markets. It just doesn't. That's not where we shine. But Georgia is definitely a very large market for us. Texas, we have some stuff in Texas, but yeah, those are our main markets.
So when we look at what's happening up here in Canada, I'm based out of Vancouver. I'm very connected, of course, right across the country, given the real estate investment network and what we do, and looking at the data and what's happening in Canada, different version of kind of what's going on in the US on a global macro scale. We're looking at interest rates and we're looking at prices that seem off the charts and even like ridiculous in some cases. They're not pulling back the way people were expecting them to. They're kind
Mhm.
of staying out there. People aren't listing homes. It's a really messy, kind of confusing market. I've been in the real estate game for 20 plus years. I've never seen a market like this. I've been in the working. I've had a job since or I've been working since 1977, and so I look at the number of recessions I've been through and the kind of the cycles of those recessions. And there's been nothing like this that comes to, I wasn't necessarily all aware of what was happening through those other recessions, but I just know this is that none of this is, really reminding me of those days other than the confusion, the uncertainty, the fear that people are operating on top of, see the escalating costs. But I'm seeing a lot of Canada money flow into the US. And you're obviously remaining optimistic about the US real estate market, at least in that multifamily space. I think it's a great game to play, especially in larger units. But when you look at what's happening economically, global macro, what's your kind of read on it? How do you see and how do you read the temperature?
I don't. There's a lot of smart people that have no clue what's going on, and they're way smarter than I'll ever be. I remember back in 2006, 7, 8, 9, I made more money in those years than pretty much every year I've ever made. Everyone's like, it's the worst market ever. We pivoted into more like, let's talk about money, let's talk about sustainability, let's talk about long-term growth. While everyone was talking about the world's collapsing, we were selling 50 to 100 houses a week in
Mm,
Georgia and Ohio, cash to people all over the world, looking for cash flow. Because when the market, listen, at the end of the day, real estate buy right, it will always work.
yeah.
And keep in mind, I'm not a debt heavy guy. I don't like heavy debts. I don't try to make deals work. If they either work, pencil out, or they don't. I think right now, though, we're still in a market where people are propping up. They're acting like everything's good, so they don't. Because again, when they say that it's not, then they got to come to reality.
Mhm.
And when you come to reality, now your ego gets affected, and everything you've been propping up gets messed up. It's a problem. So I do, and I'm a lender. I have lending on a pretty large scale. I can tell you right now, the market is in trouble. Right? Good people overextended. Again, Stevie Wonder could see deals 2 years ago. It's so easy. Now you're going to find out who the real investors are versus the people who acted like they were investors. It's a way different game. And as you know, man, this game is gritty. You got to be gritty. You got to be creative, and you
Mhm.
got to be in the trenches, and you got to be realize like I mean, it's already happening. There's some amazing deals in the works in our world where, people are like, oh, this is what we need. And it's like, it's not even close. And you're not, just because you ask for it doesn't mean that's what you're getting, by the way. Then
Yeah.
you get them offline and you have a real conversation with them and you realize, they got a business on the side. Their business is their main thing. Real estate's their side thing. And they got to cut these assets to save their business, and they know it. They're not going to say it out loud, but that's really that's what I'm seeing for sure.
So when we look at what's happening economically, you shift, there's a kind of a fundamental that I always say is that there's no bad markets for real estate. There's just the wrong strategy. And so to your point earlier, you pivoted, you shifted your strategy. And that's ultimately always the kind of solution in the real estate world is that, as we go through these different cycles, then we have to adjust our strategy. And I think to your point as well, is that through booms everybody's a real estate genius. Everybody's just following their brother-in-law's advice or their buddy's advice, or I made $100,000. Nobody took any money off the table, but their property appreciated $100,000, so there's the wealth effect and everybody feels really wealthy. Now it's interesting that you talk about being a lender, and when you go through your portfolio of mortgages that you have, are you comfortable in feeling that you've vetted those deals right? What was it because I'm assuming it's some version of private lending. Is it part of your own lending policies that you feel confident in what's going on?
Yeah, listen, I'm pretty hardcore. So I do short-term loans. I do mostly bridge, 30, 60, 90-day
I
max.
get that. Yeah.
So I'm helping people get in, like escrow money deals,
Yeah.
creative financing, they got, 1-day funding deals. We do a lot of that stuff, but I feel very confident because, I do as much cross collateralization as possible, massive personal guarantees, so depending on the deal, but you're not calling me unless you absolutely need the money is what I'm saying. So I'm definitely not a private lender. I'm a hard money lender.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. But again,
So
I think there is a place for all these places. I think everyone's using market conditions as excuses not to do anything. To your point, there's always great opportunity if you know what you're doing. You can't keep doing the same thing expecting different results. But I mean, you're in the markets back in the late 80s. I wasn't, but interest rates 12, 14, 15, 18%. In my world, when I was doing big, like a lot of single families, I was paying 30, 40% sometimes on the money per annum. You're not using that money for the full year, but these are the rates that you're going to pay because we knew production was way more important than percentages. So it depends on what your path and strategy is. You're not going to take, a 24% interest rate on a long-term hold, if you're eking by on pennies. But there's a lot of different angles in this game.
Well, I think for in the case of Canada, to a different degree, in different places of the U.S., what is starting to happen that I'm seeing is that if you're going to be a rental housing provider / landlord, then this is an opportune time. The affordability in Canada has taken first-time home buyers right off mostly out of the picture, which means that you in fact have a lineup of renters, clients that are going to rent your space. So that's where some of the opportunity exists. Not a lot of listings, not a lot of deals, which causes a different set of headaches, which is, finding deals is really problematic. You're playing in the multifamily space. Again, in Canada, it's still problematic because there's such a demand, given the size of our country. I want to go back on, something that you said earlier that piqued my interest around, around entrepreneur. You're either born entrepreneur or you're not. Either it's not a skill necessarily, it's not a thing that you evolve into, although I guess some would debate that. But I'm asking you this personally, is it nature or nurture? So how did you come to be an entrepreneur? When you think about, or when I consider what you've accomplished, what you're doing, you started that at a young age, and you were thinking, or you got to thinking quite big in terms of scale relatively quickly. And so tell me a little bit about, were your parents entrepreneurial? Where did you get your entrepreneurial spirit from, do you think?
Well, listen, I grew up in a household barely eking by every day. My mom and dad were great people, hardworking people, but they were massive mules for other people, and they got paid pennies on pennies. And grew up in a trailer court till I was 10 years old. watching my mom and dad fight every day about not having money, right? Like
Mm.
they play bill roulette. I remember as a kid in the kitchen table, they grab bills, whatever is on left on the table, that's the one they pay. The other ones get shut off, right? Like shut off notices. So I always saw the struggle. But I mean, ever since I was like 5, 6 years old, I always was trying to solve something like selling, doing a little lemonade stand. Like I always was like active like that. I was always thinking, how do we make money? Back then, it wasn't entrepreneurship; it was make money. And
Mm.
I don't know if you remember, but our social media when we were younger was called Lifestyles and the Rich and Famous. That's how I
Yeah.
saw a glimpse in another world. Because where I grew up, you never saw. I never knew anybody made more than 50 grand a year in my entire life as a child. Like it just didn't exist where I'm from. So I didn't have any, like, I couldn't borrow anybody's belief. The belief system I had, if you had a nice car, a nice house, you rip someone off to get it. That's how I
Mm.
was trained. And I'm like, as I get more money and I start realizing and build these friends, I'm like, we're actually some of the biggest givers. We're the great, like we're really good people. So I had to
Yeah.
reprogram. I think a lot of people are trying to program their mind, but you have to unprogram before you program it because you just don't see it until you're in it. And that's why masterminds and mentorships and coaching is important. But for me, I've always had it, and I grew up with two sisters that don't have it at all. So what's the difference? We saw the same thing, same day. Everything was the same until we were 18 years old. Why do I have it and they don't?
Mm.
Gino Wickman. I literally think Gino Wickman. This is the rest of his life. His goal is to study. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but called Traction. He wrote a bunch of like very very
Yeah.
popular writer. But he believes that you're born with a gene as an entrepreneur. Not to say you can't make a lot of money and do entrepreneurship stuff, but true entrepreneurship is not easy.
No.
You're dealing with real stuff. Like I always say, if you ain't dry heaving and all this stuff randomly and once in a while, you're not a real entrepreneur because it comes with the territory. And so thinking big, I didn't start thinking in big until I got around big thinkers. But I put myself in these rooms of big thinkers. Like again, you gotta put yourself in these rooms. Like pay for it, whatever you need to do. Get in a room where I thought I was a big dog. I call it king of the dipshits. Where everyone, 5 people in the room, like, dude, I did 2 deals, I did 3 deals, I did 4 deals. Someone's like, I did 5, and it's like, well, we're still making the same kind of money, as opposed to like when a guy says I did 100 deals, and I'm like, you did? And I talked to this guy, and I'm like, well, he's no better than me. The only thing he's doing is just doing it bigger. And then I borrow his belief system. I start implementing in my life. Start getting proof of work, proof of concept. Because once you see it and once you hear it, you can't unhear it and unsee it. And then you start putting it to practice and execute. I'm not afraid of working hard. I actually love it. Like, because I know it's where most people fail is they just don't do the work. So
Mm.
we just started working and implementing it. And I never wanted to be the mom and pop hamburger joint. I wanted to have thousands of them across the country,
But that is the shift, right? That is such an interesting kind of view and way of being. It's one thing to start there and say, I want to own, I want to be $1 billion company. Of course, people don't realize what it takes to build $1 billion. And I think I don't know what the stat is, but I think it's like 90% of the businesses don't ever break $1 million in sales. Like when you look at the number of businesses, it's a ridiculous strat in that regard. And that's not making any of it wrong. I guess from my point of view, when I speak with somebody like you, I always like to unpack this whole view of the world. So we and you have coached many real estate investors, for example, and RAIN, the Real Estate Investment Network here in Canada, we're national in scope. We've been around 30 years. We've been teaching people to invest and using a system, a proven system, multiple steps, use research, da 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 da. And many of our community have gone on to build multi-million-dollar real estate portfolios and are excellent investors. And then there's those that do nothing, or they don't ever, or they leave the community and make us wrong, going, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that, and there's a whole 1,000 other people that are crushing it or working it. And then you ask yourself, well, what's the difference? The education's the same, the system's the same, everybody's hearing the same thing. What's the difference? So if when you look at that, and my wife Stephanie and I launched a podcast on top of this one called The Everyday Millionaire, and it's Mindset Matters. It's a weekly show that we talk about mindset, and we just riff off of different ideas and concepts. You kind of touched on it, Mark, which is, and this is what I see in you, is that there's a shift that you've had early on of understanding how important your mindset is, how important your BS is, which is belief systems, and your BS is really important, and you putting yourself into rooms to see others who are crushing it, doing it, being scaling, doing all the things, which makes you go, if he can do it, I can do that. But that in itself is a shift. It's a way of looking at somebody going, holy crap, if he can do it, I can do it. There's a competitive nature in there. So I was like looking at the psychology of it so that, somebody listening to this can maybe self-assess and go, where is my mindset at? Am I just a technician working the tools every day? Or do I actually have a bigger vision that I'm working backwards from? So I know I'm saying a lot. I don't necessarily have a question, but what's your comments on that, Mark?
Well, listen, probably one of the biggest things that frustrate guys like you and I is giving two people the same exact map, and one does great, the other one doesn't. They talk about this though. You've heard that study about the guy, the two sons, their dad was an alcoholic. One son became a very high level multimillionaire. The other guy became homeless. They asked why. My dad was an alcoholic. The other one said, my dad was an alcoholic. It's what they take from it. See, we're great storytellers to ourselves. It's like, what story are you telling? When I saw my mom and dad doing that, I was more afraid of what I knew than what I didn't know. So many people are afraid of the unknown. Well, I knew what I knew, and I don't want it. And I'm willing to change my life to get what I want. And I wanted money then. Back then, it was just money. That's all I cared about. Because money would solve my problem, my parents' problem, and that's what was my driver. And then, as you know, as you evolve and become more mature, there's way more to it than that game. It's not just about money. But money, like anybody says, money doesn't solve problems or make you happy. It made me happy to help my parents, to make them happy. And then you start learning about what money really is, though. It's a way different animal. But it is mindset. First book I ever read in my life. I barely graduated high school, never went to college. It wasn't even a thought. Like I just wanted to get out of school and go to work. Again, to solve the problem. I wasn't looking to delay and get things on the wall. I don't need anybody to say, good job, Mark. Because in true entrepreneurship, no one's sitting in there saying, good job, Mark. You just sent those 30 emails out. Good job, Mark. You just called those 400 people that got rejected 399 times. Like, we're not getting cheered on. We're not getting, participation trophies for this stuff, right? So as this is going on, what it really comes down to, I think, confidence. I truly believe it's a confidence thing. I've coached real people at all levels. Confidence. We all have a confidence complex of some way, shape, or form. And it's entrepreneurship, you have to have raw exposure to yourself and a peer group that will not make fun of you. You can't certain people get, ha ha ha, you're a loser. It's not like that. It's more like we all suffer with it, but what are we going to do with it? So getting in these peer groups, talking about real issues, raw exposure, what's going on, why is this going on? I call it the myth, most important thing. And when you really dive in, most people are clipping tree limbs. That's their problem. But we go to the root. If you get to the root problem or root situation, you can't really solve the problem. That's why some people are just comfortable. And some people just like to buy stuff because it makes them feel good. But the same thing we could go about food, exercise. It's all the same thing, right? Wealth is a mental thing. Health is a mental thing. Working out, it's like, why isn't everyone healthy looking or healthy in general? It does take work. It's kind of a weird thing. You don't just magically millions in real estate doing nothing. You really have to get rejected and be comfortable with it. And I don't know about you, but I don't ever feel rejected. I just say, next, next, next. It's like, it's just one step closer to that yes, right? So.
Well, again, but even that's a view, right? And it's so important. He made so many great points and all of that. There's a phrase that I often use, which is, confidence is rarely owned. It's almost always borrowed. And when you put yourself into a group of like-minded peers, hopefully intentionally not being the smartest person in the room, you can really gain a lot of confidence in terms of hanging out with people that have an outlook that isn't about the doom and the gloom and what's wrong with everything. It's okay, the world is what the world is. What's the opportunities that exist in this world? How do we deal with it? What are some ideas? And again, putting yourself in a room with those individuals who aren't being shut down by what's going on in the world, but are actually looking at it going, it is what it is. We can't change it, but how do we actually live in it, work in it, prosper in it, stay safe in it? All of the questions that we ask. There was one other thing that you pointed out that I thought, we need to shine a light on, which is, what is the story I'm telling myself? And I want to just unpack that one little bit, which is, a long time ago, a coach I worked with used to use the phrase all of the time is, and it's a common meme, I think, or relatively common, which is the quality of your life is a reflection of the quality of the questions you ask yourself.
Yep.
And the challenge that people have is they don't ask themselves the right questions, and they don't stop to consider what a better question might be.
Exactly.
What you just said is, I think, a really great question. When you contemplate, what is the story I'm telling myself? So if you're not feeling the level of success that you want, if you're feeling some fear, if you're feeling like the world is coming to an end and you can't deal with it, the next question has got to be, well, what is the story I'm telling myself? Because you can put somebody else in the room, exactly the same conditions, to your point, and it's like, oh no, we got this. We're going to do this, and the whole thing. So I think it's such a powerful question. I just didn't want to step over it. What is the story I'm telling myself? Anything you wanted to expand on that, Mark?
Yeah, no, I love it. I think the biggest thing is you just got to be, it's a real simple question on that question. Does this story serve me or hurt me? It's really easy. I have a thing called thought audit. Where did your thoughts even come from? Why do you have this thought about money? Because a lot of people portray their brokenness onto someone that can help them. I don't want to hear your problems. I want to see the opportunity. And if the opportunity is awesome, I'm gonna solve your problem because you're trying to get money and I got money and I want to do the deal. So it's like you got these stories, like everyone's broke. I don't know many broke people. You know what I mean? Like in my world that I'm hanging out. Don't get me wrong. I know broke people, but I'm not typically hanging out with them because not only are they broke financially, it's mostly mentally. Things go together oftentimes. Not to say you don't have broken moments, right? We all get beat up a little bit, but like, is it serving me or is it hurting me? And the problem is you have to change Again, your ego does not like this. One of my mentors always says, your ego is not your amigo. Yeah. And when you have to confront this, the man in the mirror, you got to say, dude, who do I need to become to get the result I want? And you got to start like changing. And we're talking about confidence. Confidence comes from action, execution. Setting a time at 4:30 in the morning, get up 4:30, win. Like this is how confidence you can build it. You know what I mean? Like I'm not the tallest, I'm not the best looking, but I'm gonna work harder. I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna be funnier. Like I gotta work on my good things and my bad things. It is what it is, and that's what I love about entrepreneurship, man. It's a raw game, and I love it.
So when you look at where you're at today, and just out of curiosity, is when you consider you're still working hard, you're doing your thing, you're making money, and at what point? And this is a question only in terms of philosophically where you're at with it. When is enough money enough? Like when is money not really the primary objective, or is it always the target? Is it always the way you keep score for you? When is enough, and what does that mean to you in terms of I'm working for money, or are you working for what?
This is probably a 2-day conversation because it all comes down to guardrail structure too, right? I have priorities first. My priority is not money. My priority is always family first, right? Mm-hmm. So, it depends on what season of your life you're in. If you're 32 years old, single, no kids, go all ham. You should be working 16 hours a day, not going to the bar. Like I don't drink. I don't hang out. I don't have hobbies. I don't hang out. My hobbies are my 8-year-old kid, my 5-year-old daughter today, actually, is her 5-year birthday, and my wife and my family. Like that's what is important to me. I don't go to the bar. I don't go to golfing with my buddy. I live on a beautiful golf course. I don't go golfing. I just like the view, So it's like these are guardrails, but these are the season. I know 93% of my life with my kids are spent till they're 18. After that, it's only 7% more. So I'm soaking that in, and I'm very present. So money don't get me twisted. Money is important because if you're a business owner and you don't have money KPI structures, you don't have a business. The company has to make money, or it's not a company. So, but again, this comes with, it's an evolution process. Like in the beginning, you need money, you get money. But again, you don't steal the money from your company and go live a big life. You make 40 grand a month. That's the company made 40 grand. You didn't, and I think a lot of times people don't have that separator of, and I used to be this person for the first 9 years. Like, yeah, we made 120 grand this week. It's like, no, the company made 120 grand. I still make $5 grand a month, and then reinvest. But again, that's why you got to cast big visions, because if not, you start getting, there's a lot of like psychology of money, understanding, your attachment to money. I don't care about money. I care what money can do, but I'm not like waking up to work to make money. I already have money, already making money, but it's all relative. How's the money made? If I have passive, I have active. When I say passive, that's an overused term as well, right? Because you still got to work, you still got to manage it, you still got to measure it. But I have money that's coming in if I wake up or die. Heavens forbid, I want to keep waking up. But I also, active income. Like depending on how you structure, like what motivates you. I'm not debt heavy. I don't like big debts. I have buddies that have $1 billion in real estate and they owe 900 million. That does not motivate me. But they tell everyone, I got $1 billion in real estate. I'm like, what? You only have and they're stressed. They don't have much cash. It's just a stressful environment. Not everyone's like that, but some people I know like that. And it's like, I'd rather I'm a lifestyle guy, but I'm also but I have good guardrail structures in my game.
There's something to be said around, whatever phase of your life. So, and I think, I look at, I turned 65 last year. I'm about to turn 66, and I look at my life and where I'm at in my life, and I consider, and I've said this on more than one occasion, where I'm just at a phase of my life where I don't want any more stuff. Like you, we live on a beautiful property and we love our view and we love our home and our dogs and our lifestyle and our gardens and all those kinds of things. But there's one fundamental, I don't want to buy any more stuff. I don't want to insure it. I don't want to wash it. I don't want to worry about somebody smacking into it. Like I just am not in that phase. Yet when I think about, 20 years ago, that's probably part of what was driving me. Now, if I was talking to my younger self, I'd go, let go of that shit. It doesn't matter if a car lights you up one day, buy the car. But to your point, and I think you really shone a great light on it, which is, what are your priorities? And ultimately, it's going to be, I think, relationship. And whether that's familial or just good friends or chosen family. I know we have a really strong chosen family, what we refer to as friends that are just always around and hanging out with us like they are family. And that's, if I would have known then what I know now, I think I would have maybe subtly changed some things and not be so driven in the stuff point of view, the bling, if you will. I don't know if that's the right term because I'm not really a blingy guy, but anyways, buying stuff as opposed to what we really have gotten to in our life, especially over the past number of years, is that purpose, serving others, being a contribution, being paid for what you do. What does the world need? Loving what you do. And, I'm on the Freedom 95 program. I don't ever see myself not working, and I don't really look at it as work anymore. We love what we do and we love to be paid for it. And we just do everything we can to bring huge value to it. And in that regard, we're doing a lot of, kind of coaching, small group coaching. But, something that you said, Mark, that kind of hit me is that as I'm listening to you speak and I think about your mindset, I'm thinking about you being a big picture thinker, understanding the dynamics of surrounding yourself with the right people. How much study do you do in being a great leader, in kind of unpacking your thought processes and that mindset that you have? What were you coached a lot? Did you have mentors? To this day, if you're struggling or having challenges in business, do you reach out to somebody and go, dude, I can't crack the code on this? Like, how do you operate in that regards, Mark?
Yeah, that's a great question. Real quick though, on the stuff piece, real quick. There's a thought you have to remember. It's like, do you own things or do things own you?
Mm.
Right? It's a big difference. And don't get me wrong. Like I love watches, houses, cars. I love all that stuff. But there's a point. What's cool about the world we live in is you might want to save wells. I might want to save children, or vice versa. There's no right or wrong. It's you got to follow what I get goosebumps to talk. What makes you tick? What makes you go? What makes you go? Like what makes you get up early? What makes you stay up at night? Like get you excited, And I think a lot of people might watch us and like, well, I want to be that. But again, you've been in business a long time. I've been almost 30 years. If you're only 2 years in the game, keep going. You have a long way to go. I feel like I'm just getting started, truthfully. I feel like the more I know I don't know.
Yes.
And that's a whole nother conversation because then you start getting unfocused, not sure of the goal, it just
Yeah.
starts getting different. But I think at the end of the day, the question you asked again is what again? I'm sorry, Patrick. I'm getting excited on this. Uh,
Please.
what was the question again?
When you look at how much time and energy have you put into refining, learning your skills, or were you surrounded by coaches or mentors, or did you spend a lot of, or did you invest a lot of money into your own personal professional development?
Millions of dollars. I still invest over $300,000 a year. Keep in mind, as you're getting bigger, you have business coaches, tax advisor coaches, leadership coaches, company coaches. I mean, I have lots of coaches. Why would you not have a coach? Is wild to me. It does. It's the ultimate hack. I learned this at 18 years old. I paid a guy named Russ Whitney back in the day $2,500, literally every penny I had in my account, and I had to drive there. I couldn't stay at a hotel on the way there. It's a 24-hour drive, and I was just excited. But one thing about that, Patrick, I was in the room of about 60, 70 people. I was sitting in the front row, third seat. I remember it very clearly. I saw it. This is phone book and newspaper days. A lot of people don't know that. But, they used to have the listings in there. And he called a lady, and the lady's like, it's on speakerphone. She's like, me and my husband get a divorce. I need to sell now. Here's what I want. I mean, it was a steal. And literally, I'm like, oh my gosh, if he can do that, why can't I? And I remember, because, everyone breaks at these events and they're hanging out and they're like, that was staged. That was staged. These are older people. I'm 18. I was youngest by 10 years minimum. And everyone's like, that had to be staged. There's no way it's that easy. I was so green and so dumb. I wouldn't even know that was a question. And it was 100% real. And I'd done that thousands of times in the past, in the deal making side. But I invested 2,500. I've been investing in coaches and mentors my entire life, and will continue to do so. Why? I just don't understand why someone wouldn't. How do you think you're so smart and you know everything? It's just, again, that's a delusional thought process. And I'm not saying you guys spend 300 grand a year, but like there's different levels to those environments. Mindset. I've read thousands of books. I think about 2,500 to 3,000 books. I listen to an hour to 2 hours of podcast shows a day. But don't get it twisted. Learning and executing are two different activities. Yep. And I think some people are like professional learners and not executors. So I would read a book, and I'm not just reading any book. If I'm doing a leadership book, I'm going to read how to present at a meeting, and I'm going to go meet my team and I'm going to present it. I'm like, get the reps in. It's a repetition game. And I see a lot of people read all this stuff, but they never go put it into practical application. And that will mess up with your confidence because you know a lot, but you have never done a lot. Game changer.
Yeah, there's a phrase that we use. It's called emotion versus action, which is being in motion is not the same as being in action. Going to an event where you're learning how to invest in real estate, that's motion. Taking what you learned at that event and putting it into action and applying it and executing, well, that's action. And people get into the busyness of being in motion, thinking they're in action when in fact they're not. There's a phrase that something that you said that really stands out for me, and which is understanding yourself, knowing thyself. There's the phrase I always get to is I don't even remember where it comes from, but it's like know thyself and then be true to thyself. But first you have to know yourself, and that means you have to actually take the time to understand yourself, which most people don't. And I want to connect it to my own belief system, which is there's a phrase that is, it's just the way I am, that many people use. You question them and they go, "Oh, it's just the way I am." And I go, well, many years ago as a young man, my wife actually of over 30 years said to me, "Okay, it's a choice, right?" And that was a bit of an epiphany for me. And then the reason I want to connect that to one other comment that you made, which is, who do you need to become to achieve the goal? And who do you need to become to live the life that you want? And that's, to me, that is, it's almost a hack, is that understanding who that you need to be. If you picture yourself 5 years down the road and you're a business owner or you're an entrepreneur or you're wealthy or whatever the story is, you have to be able to look at that person 5 years down the road and go, if I don't start now to develop that character, those traits, that mindset, those skills even, I won't get there. You're not going to wake up 5 years from now and be that. You have to start. But if you have a way to work backwards from that view, every day you can ask yourself, when you don't feel like shit, you look at yourself and go, oh, what would that person say?
Exactly.
And that person would say, get off your ass, and whatever, get in the office, get to the gym, cut that deal, make that uncomfortable phone call, have that courageous conversation. And I think is such an important, I think for me anyways, developmentally, it's a game changer.
Yeah. What you're talking about is reverse engineering the outcome.
Mhm.
And it's never been easier. Back in the day when I did real estate, like you did, we were face to face. Like I was door knocking, real estate, like deals. You're going to network events and live in person, trying to shake down deals. One of the title companies, who's the players, who like very in the trenches. People are afraid to get rejected over the phone. They're not going to jump through the phone and beat you. They don't know who you are, but yet you're worried about that. You're going to die. Like one thing, Patrick, that does motivate me is death. I think a lot of people are living like they're going to live forever. It's like you understand you're literally one situation away from the end. When the man upstairs clicks your number, you're out, and there's no discrimination to that. So I function at that. In the I'll be 46 this year. The older I get, the closer we're getting to the end. So I've always been motivated by death, not in a negative way, but in a positive, optimistic reality. Like it's real. And I don't know anybody that's escaped death. Like if you're going to die, we're all going to die. And but one thing I think the problem is though is the truth is people do get better. They do get more things. So I always talk about this. You remember your first car, you remember your first apartment, how cool and exciting it was. Well, why don't you live there? What's changed? Because that still crappy car and that crappy apartment still exists. But did you change on purpose or did you just change by osmosis, just through the motions? And when you and the thing is, the reason most people don't want to reverse engineer because now they hold themselves accountable, and you can actually fail. And I think you're failing by not failing, right? Because it's not about the money, it's not about all these things. And a lot of people are making these decisions based off of maybe you're healthy right now. So yeah, you have $5 million in the bank, you're good, but you're healthy. If you have a $6 million situation, you're in trouble. So I'd rather be overly prepared for life than underprepared. Because by the time you realize you're underprepared, it's too late. And I don't know about you, but I don't have like the spunk I had at 21.
No.
So it's like the older we get, we have to realize you got to start, stacking and racking the cash and realizing, like, understand what game you're playing, because we're all playing different games, which is fine. But most people are in the game, they don't even know what game they're playing.
Yeah, 100%. So there's a story I tell that, back to owning stuff and what is life all about. There's a story I share where a friend of mine was talking about, he wanted to buy, I don't know, as a piece of equipment, and he'd been renting it and he wants to buy it. And I go, why would you buy it? You rent it for a couple grand a week and you only use it, 10 weeks of the year. Why would you buy it? He goes, I don't know. He says, I kind of want one. And, my neighbors, they just bought a helicopter, and it's like, we're laughing about it. And I go, well, here's a test for you. If nobody knew you were going to own it, would you still buy it? And he went, oh, that's a really interesting question. So anyways, he didn't buy it. So there's a little hack for you too. When you're debating whether or not you should buy that piece of bling, that watch, that car, that whatever, you ask yourself the question, if nobody knows I'm going to own this, will I still buy it? And sometimes the answer goes to no very quickly in that regard. So I wanted to share that little piece of that little hack.
I love it, man. I think one thing too, talking about guardrails, we were talking about earlier, like a car. Let's say if you want to buy a $100,000 car. I like cars. I remember being poor. I saw the Countach. I got to have the car, Ferrari, whatever, right? 308 back in the day. So it motivated me. If I didn't have that, you say, oh, you're materialistic. Cool. I'm fine with that. Call it, that's on you, not me. I know it drove me. It was a driver for me, right? So, but I what's interesting is like, I created stories in my head. I'm like, I will buy that car when I have 10x in the account, cash, liquid.
Yeah.
So I have these rules. I don't owe money on car. I have rules for it, because it's easy when you start making money just to be spending it everywhere, throwing it around like it's water. You forget how hard you work to get it, and so you create these rules. But what's cool about these kind of rules is by the time you get the money and you have this 10x or whatever your number is, you kind of don't care about it anymore. It's like whatever. It's already moved on because you've matured to the next level. Same thing with watches, houses, whatever your thing is, have like, I have to have this much liquidity, because a lot of times people get liquidity and they just go down to zero. They draw it down too hard. And then now you're forced to work. You're forced to do that deal you don't want to do because you have to do, or forced to work with that person you don't like, but yet you're gonna make some money, so you do it anyways. And I think that, as you're maturing in the game, you start realizing I'm doing this because I want to, not because I have to. And that's where that's where really ultimately people want, is to have freedom, you know?
Well, I always look at it and go, if I have to do it, I got to make sure that I love what I'm doing. And that is such a critical thing. It's overused, I know, but it goes back to when your vocation is like your vacation, you'll never work another day in your life. And when you get really lit up because you love what you do, even if you have to do it because you got to pay bills or you're trying to build a business and you're trying, man, if you love it, it's a game changer because it never feels like work. When
Yeah.
you, Mark, you're still, you're young to me still, and you are still very young. When you look at what's happening in the world today in terms of, we see what's happening on social media, we see the TikTokers or the Instagrams. If whether you like it or not, if you spend any time on social media, they're going to show up in your feed and they're making millions overnight and they're making 100 grand yesterday. And they're going through this whole thing, young people generally. What's your thoughts on the impact of, I don't know, work ethic, mindset in a younger generation than you are, even, let's say, into that 25 and 30-year-old? Are you seeing it shift from your perspective? Do you see it that way? I do, but I know the gap between me and that I'm out of touch. Even as cool as I think I am, a young person once said to me, Patrick, you think you're cool, but you're not. And I think I'm cool because I stay pretty connected. I stay pretty up to speed, but there's just no way for me to relate to that. So how is it for you?
Well, our great grandparents, our grandparents, our parents said the same thing. The truth is, at the end of the day, it's different. And what are you going to do? You can't fight. You can't fight it because it's the reality of their life. Let's be honest. You and I are 16 years old. We can make $1 million YouTubing. Why would we go to work? They're just working differently. They're working more effectively. They're utilizing the tools at their fingertips that we never even had access to until we were 18, 20 years old or whatever. So I think the coolest thing about my life is I'm on both sides of that world. I had pre-internet days for 18 years. Then I have after the internet. That's why I have a massive market advantage against entrepreneurs today. They want to sit at home, and also advantage and disadvantage. They could sit at home and generate leads and do nothing and not connect with people. But I had to grow up. Like I said, I was door knocking. I was putting flyers out. We were working. I don't think there's a right or wrong to it. I think you have to realize, though, it is a different time to be alive. Mm-hmm. And who in their right mind would not take advantage of that as a child to be able to, do these cool things? I think the biggest problem on the internet is just the negativity. It's just so negative where it's easy. Everyone has a voice, even though the voice might not be relevant. So if you're a positive person, like, I don't really hang out in those environments. I just don't like the negative structure, the conversations, or talking down to people. Like, my world, I want to uplift, I want to inspire, I want to help. And unfortunately, when you do that, people are like, oh, you're a scam artist. Oh, you're doing that. Like, it's like, but again, you got to remember, that's a reflection of themselves because they don't know me. I saw one recently, like, someone's like, oh, your wife's with you because you have money. Like, she's been with me before I had money. Again, like, there's no substance to it. But this is how they get their rocks off. It's fun for them. They think they're cool. Don't engage it. Delete it and move on. You know what I mean? So I think it's a pretty interesting time. I have a lot of young kids that work with us in different companies. And some of them are like, they're hustlers. They just hustle differently. It's like they could sit at the beach and make 10x what someone sitting in an office grinding it out can do. Not because they're smarter or anything. It's just because they have different mindset about the tools and accessibility. The internet's a pretty powerful tool. It's not just a phone anymore. These aren't phones anymore. These are superhuman tools.
You're off topic, on topic, because my head sometimes links back to previous conversation story that you were sharing about being in the audience and, doing a live call or whatever that was. Did you ever come across Ron LeGrand? You were in the real estate world. So Ron LeGrand is the ultimate pitch guy. And I've brought him to Canada a couple times. And I always remember when Ron was talking about, I think he was talking about buying ugly houses or something. And he literally, it was so funny because everybody's going, you can't do that. He goes, no, you can't do it in Canada. He says, you come back after lunch. He says, bring me a couple of deals and we'll make a phone call. So it was so funny, like 400 people in the room, phone sitting on the tabletop in front of a microphone. and somebody says, okay, I came across this deal over lunch, and live in front of 400 people, he phones that number and he pitches that deal. And the only deal is with the audience, shh. So he had 400 people, you could hear a pin drop, and there's Ron LeGrand on speakerphone pitching the deal. And I went, there's in real time was such an example of what is achievable with a group of people. Like 400 people were hoping it was achievable, but 390 of them were going, this is bullshit. There's no way. And Ron did it. Like, I don't know how many deals he did in that room over the course of the weekend, where he phoned somebody, pitched the deal, closed it, did all the stuff that he did. It was pretty remarkable. And it just popped into my head as you had shared that story. I wanted to circle back. Did you ever work with Ron LeGrand by just
No,
out
I
of
mean,
curiosity?
I consumed his content back in the day, CDs, DVDs, VHSs, right? Same thing, Ted Thomas as well. Like he was a master guy in the back of the room.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot. Again, I never wanted to be the guy up in the front of the room selling hard like that. That just doesn't. That's not my angle. But I learned a lot from him. Listen, the truth is, if you don't make a sell, the relationship transaction can't happen. Therefore, you don't pay attention. If you don't pay, you don't pay attention, right? So there's and the problem is, like, 100 people buy it, even though they buy it, only 5% actually execute, which is annoying. But also, at the end of the day, you could go buy 100 T-shirts. It's up to you to wear them. Just because Nordstrom's not changing their business model because you don't wear your clothes. So I think at the end of the day, for me, but I learned a lot. Their presence. I watched how they walk, they talk, what they talked about, their language patterns. They're skilled men. They're skilled. They invested a lot of energy learning that skill. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, they put their time in for sure, and made some. And they still are. I know, it's crazy. They still do what they do. So tell me something in terms of, you've got a podcast, you do a lot of marketing, you are kind of out there. What's your overall philosophy for anybody in terms of building brand? I mean, you've built brand, you've got your podcast, you're doing your marketing. And I'm talking more, Mark, about, do you brand yourself as Mark Evans? Do you brand your business? How do you operate in that space? And any advice or guidance that you would give?
Yeah, well, first of all, we're all branding ourselves, if you know it or not. Some are doing it on purpose and some aren't, right? I think especially in business making, deal making, I'm more known as Mark. Most people call me deal maker. They don't call me Mark Evans. They call me the DM. So I've had the DM brand for maybe 20 years now, maybe more. So there's a Mark Evans in my hometown, but he was an older guy and he ripped people off. So I just started calling Mark Evans DM, and then you change it. You got a title company, you're signing all these documents. I'm not this guy. I'm not this guy. I'm clearly not 65 years old. I'm 22 at that point, So, but anyways, disclosures. At the end of the day, you're building your brand, stay present. I think for my companies, I have a lot of faceless companies. They don't even know I own it, right? People don't know I own it. But as you build your brand awareness, you can direct traffic to them, collaborate. Just because I own the company doesn't mean I can't collaborate with them, right? It's like, hey guys, I'm with so-and-so. Direct Skip is one of our, hey, check us out. Great company, work with them, partner owner, whatever, however you say it. You don't have to be the face. And that was one thing I did for me, Patrick, actually, my real estate investing company, on the transition of becoming the business owner or entrepreneur at the next level to scale. I had to stop being the Mark Evans real estate guy and start becoming the Mark Evans business owner, entrepreneur. Because again, when you're acquiring deals, you got to create your framework, structure, hand off to your team, let them do their job. I get it. Everyone listens like, I can do it better than everybody. Okay, well, you can, but you can't do 17 things just as good at the same time either, right? And then the hardest part for me with the transition was when we were raising capital or going investor to investor, because I had those relationships. I had that brand with them one-on-one. So they always want to talk to Mark. I need to talk to Mark. I need to make sure Mark's good with it. It's like, so you have to learn how to transfer the relationship through text or email or handshake at dinner. It's like, hey, Steve, this guy's going to take great care of you. The truth is, if he's talking to you, I've told him you're the guy for it. And at the end of the day, he'll take way better care of you because I'm doing 17 things like you are. And he's direct. He'll answer your question. So it's like, how do you transfer these relationships? But, the brand thing, and then you start branding your companies. And again, all this stuff is, it evolves. We mature as individuals. So I think you should always be building your brand 100%. Kind of what you're doing with these shows, right? These are great brand awareness. And it's not about one thing, it's about a lot of things, which is even better. I think that's where most people mess up, Patrick. I'm a real estate guy. I smoke cigars, I hang out with my kids, I like art. I actually get more deals from doing those things than I do about talking about real estate because they're relatable. I'm not a sales guy anymore. I'm a buddy. I'm a friend. I'm a colleague. I'm someone they can relate to. You wouldn't believe the messages I get on a weekly basis about cigars. People taking pictures of cigars. Hey man, you smoke these. Hey, you like these? I'd love to send you this gift. Blah 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 blah. And then we ultimately do deals together. You know what I mean? So I think just be. Everyone talks about authenticity. I think that's overplayed, but just be you. You know, I take a picture, I send it. I don't look at it and try to crop it and edit it. I don't care if I look goofy or not. I'm sending it because again, to get it out into the wild is way more important than me stressing out like, oh my God. First of all, I'm not that important. You know, like no one really cares. The world's happening so fast. You know, I always say, you know, because they're like, well, what do I have to offer? It's like, well, be you. You're 1 in 8 billion. You're probably kind of unique. You know, just be you and be genuine and have fun and be silly and just have your quirks. The quirky you are, I mean, look at this hat. This is a uniform. I've had this uniform for 20 something years. You know, I've worn shirts. I like, you know, I've always been a little over the top, but that's me. That's who I am. And, you know, it connects with people. They can spot me out of a crowd of, you know, 1,000 people. Like, dude, I see a hat everywhere. This is crazy. What's up? You know, boom, instant connection. So just do stuff that you enjoy and just be kind of quirky. And most importantly in real estate, if you say you're going to do the deal. That's a good brand.
Well, I think there's a part of it, you know, you make some really interesting points but you also have to have the skin thick enough to a comment you made earlier on, which is, you know, to be that authentic self, to be who you are. Number one, you have to know who the hell that is, because that can get really confusing. I think for many people, as my experiences in coaching and working with people, is they don't really know who they are. They're carrying whatever stories they're carrying about themselves and with themselves. Having said all that, there's another part of it, which is, do you have is your skin thick enough to stand tall in who you are and own who you are, own your values, understanding that you're not going to align with everybody, and that's perfectly okay. When you stay true to who you are because you understand what your values are, you then attract and have those people hang out with you because they don't, you know, to your point, you wear a hat, and I mean, like, so people don't like hats, they're not going to follow you. They think you look silly, they're not going to follow you. No big deal. There's those that go, that guy with the hat's a cool cat. I really like his look. I like how he shows up. That's what you want to attract. But you have to get and have the confidence and, I guess, again, in who you are and the clarity of who you are, where the trolls, the naysayers, the negative kind of comments that are going to come your way in a public space, you got to be able to shirk those up.
Yeah. I think people are starving for genuine people. You know, the more genuine you can be, listen, today they might not like me. 5 years from now, they may love me. I'm not to be the judge. I'm just going to keep being me. You know, and I think, I don't know where people come in this falsehood. Well, the problem is this is the way the world's been shaped lately. It's like everyone's winner, everyone's good. Like, no, dude, like, listen, there's no participation trophies. You know, not everyone's nice. It is what it is, but there's a lot of amazing human beings out there. Don't get it twisted either. But why would I want to fake attract people I don't want to hang out with? I can't do anything with it. There's nothing there. Just to prop up my fake numbers. You know, be genuine, connect. I'd rather have 5 amazing deep relationships than 500 meaningless relationships. I don't understand the game people are playing on that. It's just weird to me. I'd rather just connect with good people. And like, if I cuss and you don't like cussing, oh, sorry, that's who I am. I'm not even apologizing, to be honest. Like, who I am. You heard me. It is what it. By the way, the person on the other side has a choice. You know, you don't have to follow me. You don't have to listen to me. You see my exactly. That's the world we live in. But everyone has a voice. Everyone thinks they need to be heard. It's like it means nothing. Like, they're not coming to my funeral. They're not even invited. So why even worry about it?
Exactly. So, I mean, you feel like there's a phrase that I use, or kind of a quote that I'm playing around with. You know, you seem like a pretty happy guy, and you have worked hard to kind of get to that space of understanding yourself, what lights you up, what keeps you going on a day-to-day basis, perhaps. But when you consider, you know, there's a quote that I use that, you know, happiness is your level of happiness is a reflection of where you are today versus the envy that you have for others. And what I get in this conversation and where I see that with people is that they're bummed out, they're depressed, they're sad, they're not as happy as they could be, they feel like they're incomplete, they feel like they're not living their best life, da da da. And I'm going, is that the case, or is it that you're comparing yourself? And you can't, if you're in social media, it's in your face. It's like, here's where you're not. You're looking at moments in time of others' moments in time where they hit it out of the park, or they're celebrating an accomplishment. My wife works with world and Olympic class athletes, and there's those individuals that, she's on her athletes are on the podium many times getting gold and silver or bronze medals, and everybody sees that picture, that moment in time. They don't see the years of work and failure and scrimping and scraping and injuries to get on that podium. They just see that, and so they want the result. They don't want the work that goes with it. And if you don't enjoy that, if you don't enjoy that part of the grind to get you there, you're done. You're not gonna be there. You're gonna be an unhappy person.
Yeah, I think everyone's chasing the destination, but the truth is, it's a checkpoint.
Yeah.
That person standing on the podium. The truth is, after I hang up with this call with you today, I'm going to get off and I'm going to analyze what I said or what I should have said or how to be better, because I want to get better constantly, right? Just like that person on the podium. Okay, I'm happy for a second because I won, but I remember all the heartache, the headache to get here to this moment, the sacrifices I gave to get in this podium. Guess what? I could have done better. I could have shaved this time off. Man, I messed this stroke up. I did this wrong. Like, this is what winners and champions do. There's no bullshit. Like, I'm telling you, this is the problem. This is why people are overwhelmed, frustrated. Because I have this saying: if I'm not willing to trade everything for one thing, I don't want your life. Because I don't know what you're dealing with. I have no clue. I don't know what you have. I don't know what you're dealing with. By the way, you might have everything figured out today. Tomorrow might be a different story. I know what I'm dealing with. I know the package I have. I know where I want to go. I have, so I don't play that game. First of all, I can't do anything about it. I can get inspired. You can inspire me. But also, I think a lot of times people are getting inspired. There's no such thing as a 22-year-old life coach, FYI. When you buy 22-year-old life coach packages, you shouldn't accomplish anything, because you clearly don't have a good parameter, like a filter of understanding of what life looks like. You need to go someone that's been where someone is where you want to be. If a 400-pound person's teaching me how to lose weight, I'm probably not going to hire him. And I'm not being mean. Reality. So the same thing with life, same thing with financial success, business success, leadership. Like, I think a lot of people are easily coaxed into stuff that I'm like, do you not like see what I see? It's just weird to me. I just think, don't compare. Comparing syndrome is the worst. It's sad, man. It's really sad, actually.
Bad news, man.
Yeah.
You've been really generous with your time. So as we start to wind things down, I'd like to kind of close off my podcast with some kind of fun, rapid fire, not so rapid questions. No rush from my end. So just to have a kind of fun. So let's just warm up. Apple or Android?
Apple.
So see that right there, you're a cool cat. That's what I'm told. I'm Apple guy, by the way, so, but I wasn't always. Do you have a book that stands out as really impactful? I know you've read a lot, but is there a book that, so for example, one of the books that I recommend, to young entrepreneurs, guys just starting out, is to read the book, The E-Myth, or the E-Myth Revisited, or the E-Myth. I think for me, it was a fork in the road and a realization about 5 years into one of my first businesses, and I went, holy shit, I'm just being a technician. Do you have one of those books that you would recommend or that you suggest?
Yeah, the problem is there's just not one. There's so many great books. That's why everyone should write books, by the way. I've written 12, and I think, I do it more for my kids, like the journey of my life. But the magic of thinking big, Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich is the first book I ever read my entire life at 17 years old. I never read books in school. I literally, back in the day, they called it cheating. I thought it was collaborating. It's, it's frowned upon, but in real world, it actually works for me in business, being a collaborator. But yeah, so Think and Grow Rich. I mean, it's hard to not get a lot of those books, and you need to read much.
That book, by the way, that book, by the way, is probably one of the most suggested books, or one of the most common books that my guests have read at some point in their life. Some say I read it once a year religiously, so it is interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite tune or a favorite band style of music that you like?
Depends what mood I'm in. I like all music. That's the
I
problem.
do.
I'm a country boy from heart, that's how I grew up with country. And then, you got the rap back in the day.
Yeah.
And then now, but I love, I hate the new music, man. It's just disgusting.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
stuff they say, it's just so vulgar, honestly. I just like the good old boy music, depends if I'm kind of just chilling with my wife and kids and hanging out, like, be silly, play some good old boy country music. My wife likes more, I forget the new country singers or whatever. She likes those guys, but I'm trying to turn her more to old school country like Alabama and all that.
yeah. Got it. Favorite movie?
Oh man, favorite movie?
You have one?
It's a good question. I mean, I always love Top Gun.
Yeah,
'Cause it's like, see what's possible, push the limits.
yeah.
I always thought that was a good movie.
Cool. Favorite swear word?
Favorite what?
Swear word.
Fuck.
Yeah. I I have guests often that go, no, I don't swear. What? How is that possible? Good for you, I guess. I think it's just such a great explicit that you need to use it. It's got to be there. It hits a point home.
Yeah, I like it for both sides too, right? Good and bad. Using that word works for both sides. It's like, man, that was awesome, or damn, I should have done better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
That's, if heaven exists, or if God exists, what do you want to say when you get to the gates?
Man, it's a good one. You made me proud.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And final question: what are you grateful for today, Mark?
Man, being alive,
Mm,
having another day.
there you go. I'm always grateful to meet my guests, have these great conversations. You drop gold all over the place. And anybody who listens to this entire podcast is probably really happy that they did right now. Mark, thanks so much for joining me today and being a guest on the show. And really appreciate your wisdom and your guidance. And you crushed it, man.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate you having me, man. Appreciate your guidance.